Fired Coaches podcast. Today, it's not a coach, it's more of a scout, which we've had some scouts on here before in the past, some football ones and baseball scouts. But really excited to sit down with Mike Rittelmann to talk about his journey being a D3 guy, as a sport management major, a football player, and then end up coaching D3 for a while before getting in the scouting world. Really excited to sit down and hear Mike's story. So, Mike, I appreciate you taking some time to sit down.
Hey, thanks for having me on today. Excited to chat some ball.
Yeah, absolutely. You grew up in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, which I was doing a little research. Tony Dorsett and Paul Posluszny went to your high school.
Yeah, Hopewell High School. Yeah.
That's awesome. Talk about, I guess, growing up in the Pittsburgh area, just what your love was with football and why you wanted to end up going into that, long term down the road.
Yeah, I started in middle school. I mean, the Western PA is known for its football heritage. You talked about two greats right there. Went to Hopewell High School, played football and baseball, then went to Waynesburg University. I started 3 years at defensive end there. Was on the baseball team there as well for a couple of years. And then after my playing career, I was getting my master's, and then I got the opportunity to coach for a year at Waynesburg, help out with the defensive line. Loved it. A lot of great memories from that university. And then after that, got my master's, and then came back home, and then started coaching high school ball, and then started getting in the evaluation world, and coached high school for about 10 plus years. And then, in the evaluation world with the College Gridiron Showcase, started as an intern. Oh man, let me do the math here. 2016, and Jose Jefferson and Craig Red are two co-founders for it. Two very good friends of mine and mentors. The event it's been great. It's been growing for the last, it's been going on for, I want to say 12 years now, 12, 13 years. I've been with it for 10. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say a decade. That's congrats, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Talk about your playing experience, which you were kind of diving into, going back to Waynesburg as an assistant D line coach. I'm assuming you were coaching some of the kids that maybe you were with on that
Yeah.
team. So what
Yeah.
was that like? I mean, getting that first experience into coaching, you're like, might be the toughest thing in the world where you're like, hey, I used to be your teammate. Now I'm your
Yeah,
coach.
it was definitely a transition. Alex Smith was my defensive line coach, and Scott Vienick was my DC. I learned a ton from him, and then Rick Shepis was my head coach. I have a really great deal of respect for him. Giving me an opportunity to play, and then also the coach. I mean, a lot of learning curves and aspects that I learned along the way, but I am so thankful to go through that process and, understand that, and then getting into high school coaching, it'll help me from there.
Yeah. What do you remember most, taking you back in time there when you started coaching? And obviously everybody goes through it, right? You're an athlete, and
Yeah.
whether you're a really good athlete or whether you're like you, obviously you said you're a starter. I sat my ass in the pine for 4 years at the Division III level. So whether you're really good or you're not, you still thinking getting into coaching, like, hey, I got the answers. Like, what do you remember being like the biggest challenge or toughest thing for you outside of coaching those guys who might have been your peers? What was the toughest transition point for you going from player to coach?
I think every athlete should have to coach a year. I think there's so much knowledge you can gain from understanding the intricacies of the sport you're coaching in. And like, I thought I knew, and I didn't. And it was a great learning curve for me. And I truly, truly appreciate it looking back on it now, understanding it, and then understanding the aspects of the game itself as a whole, and not just focusing on defensive line play, but looking at it as a whole.
Yeah. And how many years did you say you've done high school?
10 plus. Yeah.
10. Okay. So what, doing that short stint at Waynesburg where you played Division III, going to the high school level, what is it that is maybe, obviously there's different, right, in terms of talent and different things you can do in terms of recruiting players and things like that. But what's the biggest difference that you've noticed from coaching high school, or maybe something that really you enjoy of having an impact on those young kids at the high school level?
I think what you said, you're having an impact on the next generation of athletes. I mean, whether they're going to go play in college or go right in the workforce, or just go to college, get a great education. I mean, you're being a positive influence in their life, and that's something special. Not many people can do that. Making an impact on and off the field.
Yeah. What was, we talked a little bit about kind of your football background, but when is your earliest memory of, hey, I want to do this scouting thing, or maybe I like team building, or,
And
again,
uh,
for me, it's, goes back to the old Madden franchises and different things like that. When you could, just as a kid, you're like, well, if I could, put this team together or whatever, like, where do you remember that started for you?
man, I think it was always the NFL draft, watching it, and just like the more and more I watched it, like the team building aspect always intrigued me. And more and more, and like in college, like, towards the end of college, I'm like, oh man, that's really interesting. And I started to reach out to people and starting to talk to people. And that's what I tell people nowadays. Like networking is key in sports and or just in life. I mean, you have to network, meet new people. Don't be pompous. Don't be, arrogant or anything. Treat how you want to be treated, that type of aspect. But yeah, I started networking, and I love talking to new people. I love meeting new people, talking about football. My wife says I need a hobby, but um I think that it started out from just watching the NFL draft, and then, I kind of figured out, okay, what's the next step there? And my path in scouting is different from many others. So I mean, and I'm proud of that. And just through my journey and networking and getting to know people and being in rooms I shouldn't be in. It's that type of aspect, but in a good way, like being in meetings and conferences and all that, and learning. The biggest asset I tell people is never stop learning, and that's kind of my motto. And that's the go back to your original question where it started. Watching the NFL draft, watching Mel Kiper, Todd McShay. It used to be, oh man, it used to be, yeah.
The 2-day NFL draft.
No, 3 days.
The 3-day. Okay, yeah,
Wow, geez, 2 days. Yeah, because they
yeah,
used to do first, second, third round one night, and then fourth through seventh on the other night,
yeah, yeah.
Saturday. So yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what, and then I just kind of took the initiative and started networking.
That's awesome. I'm assuming you were at the draft recently.
No, I was
You
not.
weren't.
Oh, I
Didn't
was
go to
watching from
Pittsburgh.
my house. I was watching from my
Okay.
house. So
I went to the one the year before in Green Bay, being in Wisconsin, and again, same way with you, right? Growing up and watching the draft, and putting the picks down in the draft magazines that you would be able to get at the store and stuff like that. I miss the evaluation, or not the evaluation, but the analysis, because being there, right? It was like, okay, there's a bunch of these people. It's cool that's in Green Bay, but there was none of that you get on NFL Network and ESPN when you're actually there, right? You
right.
just see the picks and that's it. So that's what I really kind of missed out about that. Talk about, you were mentioning networking and kind of getting into the rooms, and I love that you had a different path than many others, because I think in anything that you do, it's hard to look at an individual and say, well, I want to be that person. I want to follow their path, right? Because everyone's is so unique.
Yeah.
But talk about like those early days for you, kind of the networking and where that all started at.
Yeah. I mean, we live in a world with social media. I know a lot of people complain about social media, but I think it's a great tool to network. And your social media should be an extension of your resume, and that's what I try to do. But like reaching out to those people, like, hey, we'd love to learn more, and like you're not asking. I tell people, never ask for a job. Ask to get to know someone first. Learn their story, learn how they think in their role, like what are they looking for, and that's what I kind of did. I network and try to connect with as many people as I can. And luckily I connected with Craig and Jose. And really, that first year at CGS, I was an intern. I was getting water. I was, a coaching assistant at the game, and we was
You're on the ground level, man.
I was a scout runner. And what that means is like the scouts would, the teams that would come there, and the scouts would give me a list of players to go grab for them so they can interview them. And I built my network up, and then finally got the opportunity to be assistant director of player personnel, and then finally director of player personnel and scouting. And our team's great. And it's networking, being able to connect with the NFL teams, the CFL teams, and the IFL, the UFL. There's more football than just the NFL. And it's great because the athletes that come to CGS have an opportunity to prolong their playing careers at a professional level, whether it be the NFL, the CFL, the IFL, the or playing overseas, the European Football League, excuse me. So, it's great. I mean, I love the game. The game has done so much for me, and I love the evaluation part, and the different intricacies you can see in a prospect, and love breaking down film. Yeah, and then I saw a quote. I think Brandon Bean said it of the Bills, the GM for the Bills. You're 75% private investigator. You're trying to gather the facts and of that player. You're trying to paint the picture of that player, how he's going to fit in your organization. And it's really cool to be with the Calgary Stampeders going on year 2. The scouting staff is great. Dave Dickinson's the head coach and GM. Brendan Mahoney's the assistant GM. Cole Huffnagel's the director of American Scouting, and Dwayne Cameron's the director of Canadian Scouting. I have learned so much from all of them, and being able to be a part of that has been awesome.
Yeah. So you mentioned at the start there, one of the CGS's founders, Jose Jefferson. He was recently the GM at Florida International
Yep.
as well, too. Correct. You talked about kind of those ground roots. Is that how you ended up getting your first experience with Edmonton in the CFL? Was kind
Yep.
of through the
It
CGS?
was. We have a good relationship with the CFL. I mean, through CGS and Chris Jones, great dude. Gave me my first opportunity with Edmonton back in 2024. I owe a lot to him. He's the GM head coach there. He said, "Hey, I love what you do building the roster here. Why don't you come on board with us?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it was a dream come true because you work for that, all your life just to get a foot in the door. And just being able to experience, I got to go up to the training camp and learn the aspect. There's different intricacies with the CFL, from the NFL game. So I mean, I can go on and on and on about it, but like being able to be in that seat, it was great. G. Roy Simon was the assistant GM.
Legendary player in the CFL.
He's awesome. G. Roy's my guy. Love him. I learned a ton from him as well. It was definitely an interesting season. Unfortunately, Chris got let go week 5 of the season. So, G. Roy was the interim GM, and we had a small staff, but we made it work. We almost made a playoff push that year. Unfortunately, we weren't retained. So that was definitely a gut punch. You get there, you're excited, you're in the
This
league,
is my opportunity, right?
and then luckily I was able to get back on with Calgary last year. Made the playoffs, and then looking forward to this year coming up, and and the CFL. I can't say it enough. The CFL, the Canadian Football League, is an awesome league for playing, for the work in, just the league itself. And as it grows, I encourage people to watch it. I encourage people to be more involved in it. It's awesome. And the players, there is talent there. There is a lot of talent in the CFL, and looking forward to a great year with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, not to, like you said, we probably could do a whole separate podcast on the different intricacies between the NFL and the CFL. And I love watching the CFL when I can in the summer and things like that. Just kind of breaking it down for people. I mean, what truly outside of some of the dimensions and
Yep.
different point systems and things like that, like at the core, if a guy is going to like Reggie Begelton, I think of years ago, who went from the CFL and played for the Packers for a while, or some of the other guys that are out there that make that transition, like how huge of a difference if you're in the CFL and you're playing 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and now you're going to make the jump back to the NFL. How big of a different transition is that for players?
So there are different intricacies. So I'll give you an example. So from an offensive line, defensive line perspective, so the defensive line starts a yard off the ball in the CFL. So from an offensive line perspective, it's a different pass set.
Yep.
Pass protection aspect. You're waiting for them.
Right.
Instead of an angle set, you're taking more of a lateral set, and you're waiting for that guy. So the patience is there, and then you see the jump from guys going from youth sports, the Canadian colleges, the NFL draft, process. The guys the defensive linemen are closer. They have to adjust there, but it's waiting, and then we're looking for quickness up front. I mean, you're looking for that first step quickness even more because you want a
Yep.
guy who can cover that 1 yard quickly.
Interesting. Talk about, again, this is where I really want to kind of get in the College Gridiron Showcase. I think you talked about being with Calgary, obviously, and when you mentioned with Edmonton, you were obviously still in the States, right? But you went up there for training camp and a few
Yeah.
things and still were located in the States
Yeah.
then. I always go back to my experience in college basketball for 12 years, Division III, and, starting a list, and people would be like, well, how do you recruit? And obviously you go out to events and you get names referred to you, and there's
Yeah.
all conference lists and all that stuff. And you're talking somewhere, you're starting somewhere between probably 400 to 600 some names to whittle down and get 8 to 10 commits a year. For that College Gridiron Showcase, and you guys usually have that event early in the year when the Shrine Game and the Senior Bowl and different stuff like that is obviously taking place, getting ready for the NFL draft and everything. How many names are you guys kind of starting with as a showcase group? And what does that kind of dwindle down to for that game then?
Yeah, great question there. So our watch list actually comes out in August, and we'll start out with 1,000 names around
And
there,
that's all levels.
all levels. That's FBS, FCS, D2, D3, NAIA, U Sports. So we're one of the largest college football all-star events in the country, just from a numbers perspective. And then the Senior Bowl does a fantastic job. The East West Shrine Game, the American Bowl, they're bringing in 120 plus guys total, and we're bringing in from like 225 to 250 a year. So we do have some leeway to bring an expanded roster that way. You're getting a plethora of different players. You're getting different aspects of a player. So if you want a bigger receiver, if you want to see a bigger receiver, smaller receiver, longer corners, shorter corners, nickels, a bigger nickel, or longer linebackers. That we try to bring in different caliber of players, different body types, that aspect to showcase their talent in front of professional teams. So it's cool to see that process go, because again, our niche is that 5th through 7th round undrafted, high priority undrafted player. Each year we're averaging 110 plus guys are getting opportunities in the league, UDFA contracts for camp mini.
Yeah.
We're still finalizing the numbers from this year, but we did have a draft pick this year. Parker Hughes, linebacker from Middle Tennessee State, got drafted in the 7th round by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, very athletic linebacker, ran like a 4.4, 4.5, low 4.5, high 4.4, vertical jump was out of this world, that for a linebacker. So like those are the back end. Our prototypical CGS guy is that back end of the roster type of guy. Now, our alumni, our alumni in the NFL is impressive. Aaron Brewer, who was a finalist for the best offensive lineman of the year, where they just made that award for the NFL this past year, was a finalist. Aaron Brewer came to CGS. He was like around 280 pounds. Came in undrafted free agent with the Titans. Mike Vrabel said that he was tougher than a $5 steak, and that was um you know
So I just want to stop you for a second. So you
yeah.
said Parker Hughes this year at Middle Tennessee State going to the Jags. Like, what does that mean to you guys when that draft pick happens? Because again, I know you're providing the opportunities. You're trying to get guys UDFAs, whether it's third day stuff. But when a guy's actually drafted that's been at your event, I mean, how does that feel for you guys? That's got to be like winning the Super Bowl in some ways, right? Where you're like, again, this is where
It's a labor of love, but like we play such a small part of that athlete's journey, that draft journey, that process. But we're so happy because we do it for the athletes. It's not for ourselves. We do it for the athletes, to give them a platform to go out and compete and earn an opportunity, and it's an awesome feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome. Some ways it's like I think people on the outside that might be just casual football fans,
Yeah.
right? And maybe they know of the East West Shrine or the
Yep.
Senior Bowl or the Hula Bowl, whatever, right? And they might be like, well, there's already so many All-Star games. Why is there? It's like, and to me, out of all sports, and you would know this better than me, at basketball, it's like, right, the basketball combine's going on right now, and they have Portsmouth Invitational. There's these events, and to me, like, yes, can basketball guys develop late and come out of the woodwork? Sure. But it's so rare. Like usually like you have it or you don't. You're this size, you can jump this high, right?
Yep.
For football, a lot of it's scheme, a lot of it's like, did this guy just not get the right opportunities and so many things. So like to me, like that
Yep.
showcase that you guys are putting on like is extremely powerful. And I just mentioned some names, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on any of these, but Matt Breida, Trent
Yep.
Sherfield,
Yep.
Jakeem Grant,
Yep.
Young Wei Koo, Gunnar
Yep.
Olszewski, Chucky Keaton, who actually I thought Chucky Keaton was an absolute stud in college. I know we had a lot of knee injuries, but just these different names of guys that like have come through there, and it's like they're household names, to people that really enjoy the NFL and,
Oh,
follow it.
absolutely.
So I mean,
Absolutely.
just some of these names that have come through there, going back to that selection process where you're like, hey, we got our watch list out, we got 1,000 guys. Obviously, right now, you can peg some guys even though you don't know where they're going to go, right? Probably a first or second round guy based on those guys coming back. Where do you guys start typically? Is it like guys that are maybe pegged like a third, fourth round or third day type guys that those are on your watch list? Or are you even going deeper to begin with from there off of lists
Yeah,
like
I
that?
mean, you're getting your information from everyone, but like you kind of figure, and we do our homework too, watching the film and whatnot. Is okay. Where does this guy stand right now in the summer? And again, you're doing projection, but you don't. I joke around with this. My 4-year-old and 1-year-old sons can tell me the top 200 athletes in college football. Like that's the easy part. That's that
Yeah.
like everyone like the hard part is finding those back in the roster type of guys. And that's where the fun is. We're talking about, okay, a D3 guy. Now with the D2, D3, NAIA type of guys, I always tell agents and players, you have to be an all conference caliber type of player. You have to dominate the level you're at right now, not where, there's certain outliers where you might not be an all conference type of kid at that level, but you have the measurables. But, if you don't have the measurables, there has to be something else in that aspect. You're lightning fast. You dominate in some way, some way, shape, or form. So you have to be a big fish in a small pond per se in that aspect. So, we've done well with guys from the D3, D2, NAIA level, youth sports, and also FCS and FBS. But again, it's giving, our motto at CGS, it's not where you play, it's how you play. And, it's that aspect of giving guys opportunities to showcase their talent.
So if you're getting an FBS type guy or a P4 type guy, like in today's world, let's say like Jakeem Grant, right? Is part of the reason that you're getting a guy like Jakeem Grant is because he's 5'7" and maybe he's just kind of like overshadowed that way? Or is it
I,
just
I
because
believe so. Jakeem
yeah,
was actually before my time.
sure.
So I'm assuming so, but
Because I saw somewhere that he ran like a 4.1 on a hand time style, and I don't know if that's true or not. It said somebody it was on his Wikipedia, so it's like,
lightning fast, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
yeah,
lightning fast. But again, it's those qualities. You're an outlier, okay?
right.
You might be 5'8", 5'9", but you can run a 4.2, 4.3. And that's that aspect that these prospects and agents have to understand. Like, how are you moving the needle? Like, where is the interest level from the professional teams? Where does it lie? And then that's where you go.
And then from like a Canadian standpoint, again, obviously with you with Calgary right now, and the draft just happened not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, there's a lot of Canadians being taken. There's American players and things like that. Again, to me, that's just another like you got the CGS here, which is a whole puzzle where you're trying to find guys that let's give them an opportunity to be seen. That like Parker Hughes, right? Great opportunity. But then you're also like you go to the other side and you put your CFL hat on, and obviously that probably helps you quite a bit in terms of scouting and having a hand that way. But like, how does that process even work from a CFL standpoint of like, here's who we're looking for the draft or guys that we can sign to help our roster this year?
Yeah, so the CFL draft is only Canadian-born players, or you have Canadian lineage of that aspect. So for the free agent, like this free agent standpoint, I mean, CGS is a great platform for that. I mean, it's I think last year for the CFL draft we had like 22% of the picks. 22% of the picks were at CGS, and
Wow.
there's a smaller number. There's only 9 teams, and I forget the number of rounds off the top of my head, but exactly. But, again, this year, I think we had like 13, 14 picks, and then we had a global draft pick as well. So again, it's just find the avenues of where the good players are at. So, I mean, it's a different aspect of evaluation. You're looking for positions like our Sam linebacker up in the CFL is more like a safety, bigger safety pretty much.
Sure.
So, I mean, those intricacies, like you got kind of like want to understand when you're going into it.
Yeah. What have you over time between Edmonton, Calgary, College Gridiron Showcase, all the work that you've been doing? I know you're very active on Twitter. I see a lot of different stuff that you're posting out there. How do you feel? And again, I know it's not a science by any means, but over the years that you've done it, has it gotten any closer from an art to a science, or is it because of all the different types of schemes and just the way that football is, and finding guys that can fit a hole here, but maybe they didn't work over there? Is it still one of those things that it's just like, hey man, it's just an art, and when it works, it works?
Well, that's a great question. I don't think there's a science to it because each player is different, and you really have to do your homework. I mean, first of all, you have to understand what you're scouting for. You have to understand what for CGS we're looking for this type of player. For Calgary, we're looking for this type of player. If you have a mindset of, okay, this is what our points are for that player. Okay, now you can see, okay, if there are outliers,
Hmm.
okay, what are the outliers? Okay, he might be 5'11", but he can run a 4.4 40. He's a linebacker or something like that. That type of outlier, like, but you don't want to always take outliers, and that, what you want to have a clear picture of each position that you're evaluating for.
How much are you keeping an eye on the UFL or any indoor football stuff that's going on? I mean,
Yep.
with you being involved in Calgary, is it constant where like I'm not saying you're watching every game, but you have a pulse on everything that's going
Yeah, I
on?
mean,
Guys are
we have alumni for CGS in the UFL and the IFL, and it's great to see them compete at a high level. Again, those are leagues that opportunities for players to showcase their talent.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess, how do you get better as a scout? And obviously I know you're always, again, based on the stuff that I see you posting and different ways that you're thinking and whatever, like, how do you try to get better? Or what are things that maybe you look into to be like, hey, maybe I can get into this, maybe where nobody else has kind of seen this yet from the scouting standpoint, or just trying to think about things
Yeah,
differently?
I think it's always connecting with people, connecting with great people in the industry. Like, you can always learn something from a coach, a scout, or operations, that type of thing in the industry you're working in. reading. I'm always looking up, like Cody Alexander with Match Quarters. He does amazing stuff with what he does on Twitter, and kind of breaking down defense as a whole. And I always like to learn and just kind of, okay, well, it's a different way of looking at that. And I say always be an open book and just kind of, always try to be learning every day. The moment you stop learning, the moment you're done.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I appreciate you jumping on. What's the best way for people to follow the College Gridiron Showcase or even yourself online?
Yeah, perfect. So Twitter for CGS, it's CGS at CGS All Star, and then the College Gridiron Showcase on Instagram, and then same with Facebook, and they're on LinkedIn. It's on LinkedIn as well. My Twitter, oh boy, RCGS. Excuse me. RITTCGS, and then Michael Rittelmann for my Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. So there are not too many Rittelmans out there that I know of. So always love connecting with people, chatting about ball, always looking to learn. I think this is a great podcast. Great to meet you, great to connect, and we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate taking the time, Mike.
Anytime.